Thank you so much, Mzee Ruchikeire, for your words of wisdom. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, a person whose name has been one of a household name, a lady of iron, and another gold, Honorable Cecilia Ogwal. Please come. We're very eager to hear from you. This audience loves you, and we continue to pray that God blesses you and keeps you safe for us. May we clap for Honorable Cecilia as she comes.
Praise the Lord. Happy birthday, dear brother. You're always looking handsome. I don't know why. I think I must ask Stella what she's feeding you with. Dear brothers and sisters, I think today we are really honoring the faithfulness of God to his faithful servants. To me, when I see Elly, and I see a crowd of elderly here today, it is like reminding me of what it takes to walk the walk of faith with God. And really today is a day of thanking God. I'm very happy that my other brother is much younger than us. Honorable former Prime Minister. I used to call him Chief Minister, and he never liked it. That today you are representing my elder brother in this particular function. It is an emotional day. When I saw a number of people mentioned, it is like you have called us to walk the memory lane. And indeed it is emotional. Because when I look at Matthew Rukakaire, some of you may not remember, but he's the one who recruited me in the UPC. When I was still... I was still a young girl, I didn't know anything. I went to Uganda House. Oh, it wasn't Uganda House then. I went to the UPC headquarters. But I was taken there by Matthew Rukakaire. And that's how I was recruited in the UPC. And every time I meet him, I said, if you knew it was bad, why did you recruit me? And of course, it's so very exciting. Then I've seen my own brother, Kakwano, here with us. I would have expected Matia Kasaija and Francis Mwebesa also to be here. These are people I sat with on the same desk. And when the Rwabogos were saying they don't want very many people to talk because they fear the bugs, some bug carrying some bad things. I think the person you should have feared is me, because I know all the bad things. When you are a girl growing with naughty boys, we are the only ones who know. And that's why many of them, they tie me with their wives so that I don't say bad things about them. And I've been faithful to them. But I must say, this is a bunch of good people. This is a bunch of people that make us reflect very positively on what Uganda was created to be. Uganda is made of so many colors. One spirit, one country. is a beautiful thing. And I thank God that you and me are part of it. So this is what makes this day very emotional. And of course, seeing my own seeds growing up. When I look at Mao, now speaking as a minister in the government, I feel like carrying my little stick, but unfortunately I can't do it now. Because now has bodyguards, whatnot. But it has not been easy, all of them. These were very difficult characters. Now you see giants. People like Omar Paul, Sam Achuri. These are cadres whom we used to talk tough at them to make them understand what we are talking about. But I must say, actually, when we all look back, God gave us an ideology which all of us have that seed. All we need to do is to nurture that seed. All of us, wherever you go, whether in the south or in the north or in the east, we all have a very rich feeling of this country called Uganda. This son of mine, Wilson, who is representing now Elly in the parliament, when I tell him I have a clan in Ankole, sometimes he doesn't understand because he's too young. But Matthew Rukakaire, the Jim Muwezis, and even Jim Muwezi, he has suffered because for him, he didn't know that we had him in our special book. So when he was Minister of Security, and I was busy mobilizing the country to return to multipartyism, he would talk tough and warn us tough. And when I decided to do my thing the UPC way, and I would put the UPC flag in front of Uganda House, and then they will say, the minister is coming for you. And I will say, let him come if he's strong. But he will not come, but he will write me a note and Cecilia, please don't shame us. I don't want to arrest you and hurt you. Because he knows where he has come from. So all of us know that we value each other. And if we know we value each other, why do we try to hurt anyone at all? And that is where I feel this gathering has reminded us about many things, and we really need to thank God. Today we are here to celebrate one person, but it has reminded us with many things that we should have celebrated maybe earlier, or maybe continue to celebrate from now on. Elly, you are very special to us. For me, I got to know you much later when I joined on the legislative platform. That's when I came to know you. And I came to know you as a person participating in politics on the other side of me. And that's where you and me never liked each other to begin with. Because I would hate anybody articulating things so powerfully on the other side. I never liked those people. Because I wanted our side always to be hard and strong and overpower them. But the good news is that they had fewer good debaters. We had more. So Elly did his best to befriend people like Ben Wacha, Kuli Park, you know, and even managed to penetrate some of our very good, strong leaders. And that's how we started narrowing the gap. And indeed, Honorable Mao is correct when he said, when things really get tough, that's when we know who among us is a true Ugandan. And there were very few who stood up to show that they were true Ugandans. And I can assure you, there were not more than 4, but one of them was Elly Karuhanga. And there are quite, I can mention some of them. Bat Katurebi is here with us. He started as a member of parliament. And I can tell you, I went to his constituency, and he was so shocked that his people wanted to talk to me more than him. and they were very upset when they found that he cooked for us chicken, And for us in our culture, women who are married according to culture don't eat chicken. So Bart was so upset, and the people were very upset that I couldn't eat because culturally I'm not supposed to eat chicken. And I still don't do it up to now. I've been there. I've been to Adolf Mwesige's constituency when John Nasasira was the minister, was the guest of honor on that day. So we could visit each other's constituency to prove that although we debate tough, although we debate on national issues, those are national issues, but as individuals, we love each other and we are serving you. We are serving the people of Uganda. I don't want to talk much, but let me highlight 3 things that make me remember Elly with a lot of fondness. Elly became the chair of the Presidential and Foreign Affairs Committee. Very difficult committee then. Because you had to deal with the president if you had to discuss tough issues concerning presidential matters and foreign affairs. And indeed, it wasn't easy for him to manage me on the committee and Agrawari. And we made sure by assignment that we were permanent on that committee. And so when it came to buying presidential jet, Elly Karuhanga came to me and told me, you know, by Mrs. Ogwal, you know, the reason why you want multipartyism to return, supposing now you overturn us and you become the president, don't you think you need a jet? And then I said, but Elly, do you want me to take you serious? He said, yeah. You know, you never know. So now, and for you, you deserve a jet even more than your brother. And so we now talk about mathematics, which he doesn't know much, but it would depend on my guidance. And then I would tell him, I said, okay, let's agree on the jet, but you are not going to buy the new one because it will take a lot of money. And so we'll debate around that. And that's when the governor would come in and say, look, let me talk to my sister firsthand because we both understand these numbers. And he said, buying a second-hand one, you are buying headache. But if you buy a new one, you are buying long life. So when you go to meet the president, you tell him you want a jet that would last longer so that when he goes, you can also use it. So you see, at every point, there was a bet for me. That is where Elly Karuhanga really did extremely meticulously well as a leader of a difficult committee. I'll never forget that. And in the 6th parliament, going to the 7th parliament actually, people used to invite the president, celebration of victory, whatnot. And for me, I never believed in that. But I had to make sure we celebrated Mao's victory because it was a difficult delivery. It was a childbirth which was hard. So we had to go there for a purpose. But I didn't want that celebration. So Elly insisted that Mrs. Gwal would want to see your constituency, which was then Lera municipality. And therefore, you must invite us. So I agreed to invite. The problem was who was to be the guest of honor. So I told Elly, you, because you are my chair. Said, no, I will ask the president. I said, now if you bring the president, my politics is finished. People will now say, so she's talking multi-party, when actually they are talking the same language. So Elly insisted, and I was shocked that the president was so willing to come to Lera municipality. And when I told Elly, if he's to come, I hear when he goes to big guest of honor, sometimes he arrives at 4 and 5. The lungs are difficult to manage. Tell him to arrive on time. Now, Elly, The president promised to arrive at 12 noon. He arrived at 12 noon. We, the organizers on the ground, are the ones who are not ready for him. That was Elly. So Elly, I can assure you, you have left a big impact in the hearts of many people. They have never had a chance to tell you. But this opportunity is really valuable. It has come out. Like somebody say, here, when you get an opportunity, and you air it out, you feel lighter, you feel better. So I want to say, brothers, that Elly has been a unique leader. He has been a unifier. And for a long time, he has been looking beyond Ugandan borders. Some of you may not know, but when we were debating the creation of the new East African community, Elly played a very critical role. And it so happened that I started right from the beginning with the Julius Nyerere group, the discussion group. But when it came now to fine-tuning at the parliamentary level, Elly was our team leader. He was the chair of Foreign Affairs, Uganda, of Foreign Affairs Committee. And of course, which used to take care of East African community as well. And then we had the Tanzanians and the Kenyans and the observer team. And we put up such a tough debate that those who read the charter of the East African community, it is actually a charter written by Uganda. But of course, difficult to talk about it, but it was us. Every motion that we brought for change, it came out. And I think Elly remember one that I stubbornly refused to amend, where we wanted the new East African community to be private sector driven. And that was his spirit. That's the Ugandan spirit, to say, look, if we leave it to the politicians, when they quarrel, it will go back to what we experienced in the past. So let it be private sector led. Let it be people's driven community. That was the spirit of Uganda, led by Elly Karuhanga. And I think it's important that we should know this beyond you. Because when you are doing this, you are not doing it for your family, but you are looking beyond Uganda. And we really need to thank you for that. Again, one of the things you may not know is that the building of Foreign Affairs, the new Foreign Affairs building, which you now see, is one of the best government structure. It was actually the committee, the Karuhanga's committee, that fought very hard to give a good face to our Foreign Affairs office. And that's why we now have this. And we had to work very hard to make sure that government put in budget and the building became a reality. And we're now extending to the embassies. I continue with the spirit, Elly, even after you left. I worked very hard for the Rwanda mission. And we have been trying for others, but it is difficult to break through. But I think it's one of the areas we need to focus on. But your spirit has been able to bear fruit, and I want to thank you for that. And finally, I want to say that as Ugandans, the statement I've heard from the speakers, the youth especially, the Rwapogos, and all this array of youth who have spoken, including Chairman Mao. You are talking about mentorship. Mentorship is a two-way process. It is a process where the youth must be willing to listen to the elderly, and vice versa. But what I've discovered is that instinctively an elder wants to give wisdom to the youth. But I must tell you, the youth of today are very difficult to manage. I don't know whether it's computer which has changed the culture. I don't know whether maybe they know this social media thing better than us, but they are difficult to manage. What I'm saying is, the elderly are here with you. Let's use their wisdom if you are to move far. And if you don't get the wisdom of the elderly now, you will perish without knowing. Because where you would have been guided, don't take that route, take this one. And you insist that you know. Because your computer antenna has shown you, you will fall in the ditch and you cannot blame the elderly because you didn't ask him or her. I know I'm speaking for many people who cannot speak. But this is it. Let the youth realize that the elderly are there for them, but let them be willing to learn from them. This is the question I want to, or the point I would want to put to the youth. And finally, maybe I should thank my brother, President Museveni, for planting the seed in this elderly. Some of them are fighting quietly with arthritis, with what? They don't know to whom to cry. So if you can plant a seed, let's spread that seed to reach far and wide, to touch really the needy. We'll be very grateful. That's the only thing they can get from us, to thank them for what they have done. That sacrifice they have made is for you and for the future. They have now reached a point that they cannot enjoy. Elly, tomorrow oil will make, that is in 50 years to come, 30 years to come, oil will make Uganda very rich. Maybe your children will be using helicopter from the compound to wherever they will be working. Maybe they will be working in New York. Then they come back to Uganda. They'll be using jets and what have you from your oil, but you will not be there. But the input you are putting now, they will not have put in that input. They will now be harvesting your effort. This is something we must acknowledge and appreciate while you are still alive. So on behalf of Ugandans, I think I need to thank you and appreciate the input you have made in the oil sector, the input you have made in Parliament, how you made Parliament to increasingly realize we needed national unity, and we have continued to need unity if we are to reach a consensus to move Uganda forward. This is your effort. This is our effort. We must all do it together. I want to appreciate you today. I must thank you very, very much. Stella, in the past they used to say, behind a man there is a woman. I would say that statement did not come from our grandparents. Our grandparents valued their wives, and their wives always walked in front. So that word, a woman being behind, is not African. What I can say is that because you walked in front of Elly, Elly is what he is today. And let us teach the younger generation to respect their husbands, to spoil their husbands. You know, I always say, God had wisdom when he said, a woman is created to be a helper to the husband. God has wisdom because God knows that men are naturally weak. All men without any exception, naturally weak. You need a strong person to make this man strong and useful. So, how can this strong person who is driving a powerful man, including a king, be behind? Can only be in front. So I must thank you, Stella, for being a good example of leading from the front, leading Karuhanga's family and home, and making him what he is today, which we are celebrating, and many other people. Surely I would want to mention so many. There's so many people here who are my relatives. You know, when I see Frank Tumwesije there, today is a minister. Occasionally when he remembers, he say, Mom, where are you? And yet when he was a nobody there, he would be calling me every day. And the The only thing he remembers is one time when Mama Mbabazi was walking, trying to catch up with my walk. And then he, because I deliberately did not want to acknowledge that he was following me. Maybe it would have caused a quarrel or something. But he was following so vigorously. So in order to catch my attention, he started singing, Cecilia, you are breaking my heart. So and I didn't know young people were observing. So I said, shut up. How can Cecilia break a Mukega's heart? So you can see how much we have walked the journey together. It has been sweet all along. Some people say sweet and sour. Even where you feel it is sour, eventually when you look back, it is actually sweet. May God bless you so much. All of you, I love you.
How many of us would love to hear Right Honorable Mbabazi sing Cecilia again? Wouldn't it be a nice thing? Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome the vision bearer of this mentorship session, who incorporated the rest of us, Audrey Krawogo, to do the citation. As the guest of honor, Right Honorable Mbabazi hands over the awards. Audrey, now is your time.
So the first one, he is a financial and accounting expert. He led the UNDP accounting office in Uganda in 1966. He later joined the British Defense College and rose to the rank of major. The UN wanted him in New York, but he insisted he would work and stay in Uganda. He worked with 15 early trained army officers of Uganda, and 13 of these were killed by Idi Amin, with only General Nyangweso and Egesa surviving this purge. He headed a large legal firm in Kenya. He headed Uganda Bati, Uganda Garment Industries, and in 1984 worked for a large Canadian steel firm employing 500 engineers as its head. In 1989, he contested for Ruhama County seat and got 398 votes of the 399 votes cast by lining behind the candidates' backs. He is the architect of the many committees of parliament we see today that were created by the NRC. He headed the UCB and later URA before retiring through Yojua in Nyaburuza in Ntungamo district. He turns 81 years of age on December 1st this year. He continues to make a case for better farming and accounting methods for the country, and he works daily. His name is Mzee Elly Wakakoko. Jules, please come and receive this citation and his award. Eh? The next one, he's one of Africa's best cardiothoracic surgeons. This word is very hard for me to pronounce. Cardiothoracic surgeons. He enrolled at the School of Medicine at Makerere University, graduating in 1969, and subsequently elected a Fellow of the College of Surgeons at Edinburgh. He worked for the UK's National Health Service as a senior registrar, and in the 1970s. And then he went to Kenya National Hospital, where he started the cardiothoracic department. He moved to Ngora Hospital for 5 years and built a theater there, wanting to work in a rural setting. In 1986, he moved to Kampala and set up the Heart Institute. He became a chief surgeon at the Ministry of Health. He's a fellow of the College of Surgeons of Eastern, Central, and Southern Africa, which he helped to found. He set up the Global Health Workforce Alliance with WHO and moved to Geneva, returning to head the Busitama University as its chancellor. He was the founding chair of the Global Stop TB Partnership and one of the architects of the Global Fund to fight AIDS, TB, and malaria, or Gavi Fund. He's a senior associate at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. He liked playing table tennis when he was young, and he was a good debater who missed politics by an inch. Today, he's devoted to community health work. He's the head of the African Center of Health and Social Transformation, based in Kampala. He is currently the Chancellor of Soroti University. He turns 80 this year on September the 5th. His name is Professor Francis Omaswa. The next one, he was one of the early guild presidents at Makerere University with the front seat of the events that led to Uganda's independence. He had a successful career in the corporate world, but in 1981, his house was the base of the nuclear cell that would form the NRA and later the large force that has kept the country together, shaping our politics in the last 40 years. He headed the external wing of the NRM and became cabinet minister heading privatization docket. A very principled and patriotic man, he's committed to public good, even in his advanced age. He speaks to and counsels young people in public leadership. He's retired and does farming and hospitality business. His name is Mzee Matthew Chikere, and he turns 85 this year. So we're adding something extra on Matthew Chikere because of the age. It's a particular painting, if you can also bring it. On top of the three, there is a special painting. It's an art piece. Next one, he was one of the first 23 people who entered the Moshi Conference in 1979, and he elected Professor Yusuf Lule just about the end of Idi Amin era, where he had been in exile. He's a lawyer and an ardent debater. He fell out on principle with his party leader in 1996 by joining the Paul Karuhanga Semogele coalition against NRM. He led the formation of the Young Parliamentary Association, or YPA, which would later morph, not entirely, but largely, some of its elements into Reform Agenda in 2001 and later FDC 2006. He lost the speakership of Parliament to the late Francis Ayume. He led the Oyam North constituency till he retired into law practice. He's a principled and affable man. His interpretation of law in a layman's language made him a favorite of fellow MPs, and he remains a voice of moderation and equality in politics. His name is Honorable Ben Watcher. So Honorable Chuti and Honorable Mara will pick it for him. He was here, he left. Huh? Next one is, he's one of the earliest local administration leaders of Uganda in 1959. He went to Makerere College, then later University of London and University of Wisconsin in the US. He served from 1967 as Secretary of the East African Development Bank, and 1973 appointed Chairman Managing Director of UCB, the precursor to Stanbic Bank of today, till 1978. He was one of the early district chairmen of Hoima, and he joined the government as Minister for Trade and Industry in 1989, later Minister for Water and Environment. Eventually Public Service, he retired as third Deputy Prime Minister. He was very influential in establishing the roots of NRM in the Bunyoro region in the early years, and he brought one of the religious faiths to NRM early, and NRM had sought to distance itself from this for a long time. He lives in Kitoba, near Hoima. He turns 89 this year. His name is Mzee Henry Muganwa Kajura. These are not copied signatures. He signed each of those certificates, the president. And it says this certificate is awarded to Mzee Right Honorable Henry Muganwa Kajura for your exemplary service to Uganda and humanity, and setting a great example for the next generation in public leadership. His Excellency General Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, President of the Republic of Uganda, 31st of January, 2023. This is the award he gave you that goes with that certificate. The next one, a close confidant of Yoweri Museveni in the 70s and 80s. He would contest and win the LC5 chairperson seat for Rukunjiri in 2002 with a wide margin against his competitor. He would go on to serve as Uganda's ambassador in several postings and retire to the bench of NRM elder advisors in 2015. He presented Yoweri Museveni for another term of office. He has a keen sense for what is good for the party and for the country, and finds time to mentor young people in party growth and development. His name is Ambassador Gabriel Kangwaje. The next one starts with a quote, an open quote. As a teacher, I have been studying all along. People should remain studious till the last day of their life, close quote. Said a jovial and visibly Spartan in clothing and diet old man. He has served his country very well and spotlessly clean with a large heart. He's begun his teaching career at Ngora High School in 1967 until 1971. He had been at Ntare with the young Yoweri Museveni, and they were both in Dar es Salaam University as students. He became Senior Inspector of Schools from 79 until 89. He later joined the newly formed URA. He was fished out there to head the interim Uganda Electoral Commission that gave us the Constituent Assembly in 1994. When he finished the job, he did well. He returned to URA as Acting Commissioner General and retired in 2004. His name is Besweli Stephen Akabwai, now 82 years old. He is retired and living partly in Katakwi and Kampala. Mzee Akabwai, what a pleasure to see you after 20 years. The certificate says, it is awarded to the Honorable Stephen Besweli Akabwai for your exemplary service to Uganda and humanity, and setting a great example for the next generation in public leadership. I want to pass it on to you. 10 million shillings that he called transport. Next one. He's a man passionate about botany and plant species. He was a lecturer and warden of Mitchell Hall in 1971 at Makerere, when one morning he woke up to a phone call, an announcement on Radio Uganda that he'd been made Minister for Education by Idi Amin. By 1973, he was unable to keep the job given the reign of terror by Amin on educated people. He tendered in his resignation while in Nairobi by telex and went into full exile, teaching at the University of Zambia and entering a network of those fighting Idi Amin outside the country. He would attend the Moshi Conference in March 1979 and become the chairman of the National Consultative Council, the first parliament after Idi Amin. He's known for his close associates, Professors Yash Tandon, Omonyo Jok, and Dani Wadada Nauderi. In a sarcastic quip that easily caught on, the late President Godfrey Binaisa called this group the Gang of Four, after Chairman Mao Zedong's group in power that included Jiang Qing, Jiang Chunchao, Yao Yinyuan, and Wang Hongwen. He returned to public life as our ambassador to South Africa in 1995, and he served as Minister for Tourism and Antiquities. He asked the president personally to release him into retirement when the president appointed him to serve as an ambassador to France. He didn't want to leave the country again for long periods. He instead returned to education sector, heading the Mountains of the Moon University. His name is Professor Bintanywaine Rugumayo. He turns 88 this December. And he has a special piece of artwork too. Professor Kaipire Muno now is wondering whether this is a painting or... So sweet to see these people. Okay, the next one, he's a doctor of philosophy, and at the defeat of Idi Amin in 1979, he became Minister for Lands until 1980. He returned to teaching at Makerere as head of sociology department and returned to politics, representing Igara in 1989 elections of the NRC. He served as minister in the Prime Minister's office, Minister for Disaster Preparedness, Director of External Relations at NRM Secretariat, among other positions. He retired recently, and along with Professor Ephraim Kamuntu, they are working very hard to support the research, growing, and certification of our Ugandan green teas, which have the immune booster called anthocyanin. His name is Professor Bazana Tarasisi Kawejere. He turns 82 in April this year. The next one, graduating in 1969 with bachelor's in political science, left teaching at Makerere under Al Mazrui and joined the Foreign Service. He headed the Department of International Relations at the old Institute of Public Administration, IPA. At the time, the institute was setting a standard for quality public service. He worked with Elly Wakakoko and the late Dr. Joshua Mujenyi at this institute. He later ran into exile in Canada in the 70s, continued teaching at Carleton University, returning in 1986. He was posted to Washington, D.C. as Minister Counselor under Princess Elizabeth Bagaya. He had an immense task of explaining the early days of NRM to a suspicious American audience, which thought the organization was a little more than Marxist and heavily aligned to Gaddafi of Libya. Later, he was posted to Copenhagen in Denmark and eventually returned to work as State House Comptroller. He is retired and lives in Roharo, Mbarara. His name is Francis Katana. He turned 79 this year. He's represented by Sven Karekaho, who should receive his award. Next one, for a long time he worked at the International Atomic Agency in Vienna. He returned to Uganda and took up politics in Kasanda in Mubende, both in the sea and parliament. He wanted to do good, but politics and science often don't mix easily. He would later resign his seat in parliament to take up a job at the African tsetse flies and trypanosomiasis eradication center in Addis, helping raise money for both water in the dry parts of Uganda and tsetse fly control. His name is Dr. John Patrick Kabayo. The next one is one of the early vet doctors in Uganda with an influential role in establishing Makerere University Vet Department. He straddles between animal medicine, philosophy, and politics. He graduated from University of Nairobi and later the University of California, and he takes politics with a keen sense of white and black and often uses his science background to judge social issues. He served Rubabo County very well in the NRC, and he's now retired, producing one of the best fertilizer brands for coffee production. He helped shape the early agricultural policy of NRM as minister and retired as vice chancellor of Makerere University. His name is Professor George Mondo Kagonyera, and he turns 82 this year. He was chancellor for Makerere. Thank you, sir.
Well, what can I say? Many times, people are remembered when they are dead, and tribute is paid to them when they are in their coffins. Therefore, this is a unique occasion when His Excellency the President has remembered those of us who served with him in serving our country. Therefore, I express my greatest gratitude to His Excellency the President for this symbolic gesture, which we Christians call this a kind of sacrament. But it's very important, and especially when among those of us who have been remembered even if people who have served in the opposition in this country. I think this is a very important gesture and to augurs well for the future of our country. And I want to thank Mr. Wabogo, really, who has been instrumental in having this occasion take place. Thank you.
The next one, he began as a state attorney in 1975, after university till 1983, when he went into private practice. He was a member of NRC representing Bunyaruguru County, now in Rubirizi. He held several portfolios in cabinet as regional corporation minister, industry and technology, state minister for health until 1995 when he joined the constitution-making exercise for Uganda. He was appointed Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in 2005 and later the Chief Justice in 2015. At the peak of COVID-19 lockdowns in June 2020, he marked his last day in office, handing over to Justice Alfonso Owiny-Dolo, a colleague with whom, as often as fate gets it, had been in the same CA, and they both belonged to the best crop of legislators of their time. A down-to-earth man, an interesting personality, he will stop and greet you with warmth regardless of rank or circumstances. He is the founding partner for Kampala Associate Advocates. His name is Justice Bat Magunda Katurebe. And he's only 73 years. He retired to farming and hospitality in the beautiful county of Bunyaruguru. Next one, in 1993, at the peak of the debate between the movement system and the yearning for opening up political space for political parties that were banned then, she would come to Makerere and debate Kahinda Utafire, then a colonel in the University of Quadrangle. Many of us remember these moments. Very courageous, eloquent, and combative when she has to make a point. She was very impressive, standing word to word, foot to foot, with a somewhat popular army officer with students Otafire was at that time. A fellow who would come swashbuckling with a pistol and full military attire, and a simple lady making a point. Students would shout, urinate, giving her support, not on account of her views, but her act of courage, at a time when many were so shy to speak for the UPC. She worked in the 1980s at the Uganda Embassy in Nairobi, and then with the Advisory Board of Trade, and she won Miss Uganda contest in 1969. Losing her seat in 2006 to the son of the UPC founder, she switched constituencies and parties and won in Dokolo. She has mellowed and she has grown older and has become pretty accommodative. A good example and a wonderful mother to many in politics. Her name is Cecilia Atim Ogwal, and she represents Dokolo District as woman MP. A veteran of Uganda politics and a very progressive politician and businessman. He stayed the course against turbulent bad politics of Uganda in the 80s, and he belonged to a gang of three, which included Kintu Musoke and Kirunda Kive Jinja, the late. They were followers of the late John Kakonge, the first UPC Secretary General. They were honest men who wanted clean politics. They would later team up with a younger Yoweri Museveni, who they found home with in terms of ideas. They would clandestinely support the Bush struggle. Under Amin, he put his focus to football as a way to provide for people and hide them from the traumas of the Amin government. He was the coach of the Ugandan Cranes when Uganda team beat Ghana in 1978 for AFCON. He served as the longest minister for local government from 1989 to 2004, leading decentralization exercise along with Professor Nsibambi, then an academician at Makerere. He never gave up on wanting to take his own route to leadership, winding up forming the Progressive People's Party in the elections of 2011. He retired and he lives in Tinda at Davidandi Close. He is 86 this year, and you will find him at the veranda of his house late every afternoon, mentoring, speaking to young people. He believes Uganda will do better with her future, given the politics of unity that the NRM began, even if there are some disagreements. His name is Mzee Jaberi Bidansari, represented by his son Kakonge. Economics at the University of Nairobi, began his career in finance and mining positions from humble beginnings. He had a Nissan dealership in 1974, and he ran back to exile in Nairobi. His family helped to smuggle out some of the rebel leaders' children from Uganda at the peak of insecurity, him and his wife. He and his wife set up a used car importation business in Nairobi, financing some of the activities of the NRM external wing. When he returned to the country after 1986, he headed the coffee marketing board. He retired to set up his own printing and publishing firm, the Industrial Graphics in Entebbe, which ran a newspaper called The Marketplace. I know this because I moonlighted at this newspaper every evening after 8 p.m. He now lives in Rubaya, Kashari, Niambarara, with his wife. His name is Mzee Ernesti Kakwano. This man said, and I quote, "Principled people are hard to find. You can hate them, you can like them, but they are rare, and you'll always turn to them in times of trouble," close quote. He was speaking of Tiberondo warning this man in 1981 to leave Makerere teaching post because the Obote government knew about his activities as support of UPM and Yoweri Museveni, who had just lost an election in 1980, and he had warned him he would go to the bush. He entered the University of Dar es Salaam to study law in 1969, graduating in 72. He was with Fronasa and eventually joined the bush in 81, raising to the rank of colonel and served as NRA's chief political commissar. He would later represent Igara constituency, East, in the CA, and become its member of parliament, serving for a long time as a Minister for Defense, Education and Sports, eventually Secretary General of East African Community. He retired into private consulting after 2006, and he and recently tapped to chair the Education Policy Review as its chairman. His name is Kano Amanya Mshega. He's not here. We'll keep his... Next one. Born in the old Mayuge district to a colonial Gombora chief, his career in the public life spanned 60 years. He rose to become the principal private secretary to the late President Obote. He worked with the late Frank Kalimzo as first head of public service and Obotho Fumbi in the post-colonial public service. He witnessed the attack on Lubiri in 1966, and he was there when there was an attempt on Obote's life at Lugogo in 69. He only knew how close he was to this bullet when he got to Mulago with Obote and saw blood on his shirt. Amin asked him to keep the PPS post after the coup of 71, and he made him Minister for Culture. He ran into exile in Britain and wrote The State of Blood, a famous book that chronicled the brutal rule of Amin, exposing the evils of Amin government. He would return to politics in 1986 as LC Resistance Council Chairman 1. He remains an honest and simple citizen. He was a SEA delegate for Jinja Municipality West and its MP. He was Minister of State for Agriculture, served many statutory committees. He's retired. He lives in Jinja in Magwa Parish in Lubogo. His name is Henry Chemba. He's 86 years old this year. His daughter is here to take this. At the end of the Second World War, entered Makerere, graduating 71. He was part of exiles fighting Idi Amin, served 80 to 85 government. He was lectured at Makerere University, chaired Nile Bank, joined active politics in 2001, Minister of State for Finance, appointed Minister for Water and Environment, and moved to tourism. He's a beef rancher and very passionate about Ugandan tea. He's mentor to many young people, a close friend of the president from when they were members of Ntare Debating Club. His name is Professor Ephraim Kamuntu. Next one is an agriculture scientist who led research on the effect of Gemini viruses on the symptoms, severity, growth, and root yield of cassava in Uganda, among other research projects he's done. Switched professions, joined politics to represent Agago North constituency under the banner of FDC, became a leader of opposition in parliament, later ran as independent, retired from politics to develop his farm, improving agricultural production in northern Uganda. He's a very articulate, affable, kind man who plays accommodative politics and an example of a centrist in the way he approaches public issues. I know this because sometime in 2014, without any need for invitation, my wife and I received him at our farm along with several ministers and MPs of the movement. He spent a day with us teaching as well as learning from us. His name is Professor Maurice Ogenga Latigo.